them with tools and guidelines, information, technical assistance, any sort of support that they require with regards to responding to disasters. And in this context, we're going to be talking mainly about hurricanes. The agency also offers training programs with various emergency managers to prepare them for any sort of disaster with regards to hurricane. One aspect that we tend to focus on heavily is to share information with regards to the impact of impending storm. We liaise closely with the Met Office at SCASPA to basically inform the general public of any sort of impact that we might be getting. Another crucial role that we play during the hurricane season is to respond and coordinate any sort of effort. So let's say we are actually impacted by a storm, the agency actually coordinate any sort of response. So if we are impacted and there is need for us to basically support anybody, we basically do the coordination to basically ensure that persons remain safe and secured even after the storm. Speaking about after the storm, we basically play a major role with regards to recovery. We offer public assistance. If there is any kind of debris or anything that is left as a result of the storm, we basically assist with the removal of that. And then we also engage in long-term recovery, which basically help officials, the general public, to give them a sense of relief after the impact of the storm has passed. It is important to note that the role of the agency is critical, but the onus is on the general public to take a proactive approach with regards to being safe and protecting themselves in the event of any sort of impact.
We know that we don't ever want to have any impact. We don't ever want to have any loss of life, any damage to property, and that is always the major aim. Even at SCELEC, safety is the number one priority. NEMA has been a very, very crucial partner and a very good partner over the years. If I am to be honest, we often get the call from NEMA even before we have to call NEMA. So those calls usually come in even before we get around to calling NEMA, because they pay attention very closely and understand their role. And I hope that the public never takes that for granted. NEMA, just like SCELEC, we are servants of the public in ensuring that safety remains the number one priority. Now, as SCELEC is an electric utility provider, our role in preparation and restoration is a lot different from some of the other entities that you work with. And you also do work with all of the utilities. There is there's a national utilities subcommittee. So if you can walk the public through what that preparation looks like and the type of guidance that you do provide for utilities, or how that union works altogether.
Well, primarily, before there is any sort of impact, we generally have meetings and so forth to basically discuss the plans and procedures that are in place to ensure that all persons are on board. You know, as I mentioned, the different utilities basically come together, water services, telecommunications, electricity, basically come together and basically prepare themselves in the event of any sort of disaster, any sort of impact. And they basically outline what they will do in the event of destruction, and basically plan so that if there is any impact, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and everybody knows their roles and responsibilities with regards to rebounding or rebuilding after the impact of the storm.
Certainly, and we see that it also provides a great opportunity for the utilities to work together.
Yes.
Because especially for those of us who do have underground cables, which is the electric utilities and the telecommunication utilities. We have to work together. We do share infrastructure, so we have to work together in terms of the lines that are on the poles. So we do have to work together, and we try to make it as streamlined as possible, especially as it relates to information sharing, and even sometimes the sharing of resources and the sharing of utilities, of trainings, and all of the, when I say resources, even if it means borrowing, just sharing with each other. And so it is through that NEMA mechanism how that is possible, and we're very grateful to be a part of that mechanism. Now, we sort of spoke about the SCELEC and the utility component, but you did mention earlier that the main area that we like to focus on is the preparedness of the general public. Now, I know you very recently joined the NEMA, but you've lived in syndicates for most of your life, at least I think so, based on what I know. How do you think we do as a people in terms of preparation, and what do you think we have learned any lessons from storms that have passed, or even seeing our brothers and sisters in other countries who have been impacted as it relates to how we prepare?
Okay, so the approach the agency basically has taken towards hurricane preparedness and response has generally evolved over the years. With storms becoming more intense and destructive, we have to devise ways and means to basically guide these experiences or use these experiences to improve the decision-making process. So one of the initiatives that we tend to push forward is basically to take on a whole-of-society approach. It is important that when it comes to managing disaster, we don't just think that, oh, it's a NEMA thing or it's a government thing or whatever the case might be, or a SCELEC thing, you know. We have to think that it's us as individuals, we have our roles to play as well, you know. All of the major stakeholders have their roles to play with regards to making sure that we stay safe and remain protected during any sort of disaster. One thing that we tend to stress to as well is to ensure that any sort of building codes or so forth that we implement, they are strong and they're able to withstand any sort of impact that we might get. So over the years, the building codes have been revised to ensure that persons build better, for lack of better terms, and to ensure that any kind of sort of impact, they basically can resist this impact. One thing I think that is important as well to stress is that even the public utilities and so forth, they also take certain measures to ensure that whatever infrastructure they're putting in could withstand this sort of impact as well.
Definitely.
So they tend to basically update upgrade their procedures as well. One thing to stress, you made mention of it as well, is cross-agency teamwork, you know. Working with the different agencies, working with the different ministries, working with the different utility providers as well. Also, that is one of the goals that we want to push forward going forward. Collaboration is very, very important, and the agency can't do it by themselves, you know. So we try to keep this kind of relationship and these kind of bonds with public sector, the private sector, non-governmental agencies such as like Red Cross and so forth, to enable us to basically respond and recover in a very efficient and effective manner. One thing that we try to implement recently as well, basically we learned from past, is basically to use technology and data to basically understand the storms and understand our device ways in which we could actually prepare for these storms. All right, so traditionally, you know, whenever there is like some sort of impact, we generally just basically go out and do whatever support or whatever the case might be. But now with the advancement of mapping technologies, GIS and so forth, we work very closely with the GIS lab to basically create maps and so forth to identify vulnerable areas and those sort of things, you know. If there is an area that is inaccessible, we use like drone technology to basically go over and see these kind of sites and so forth, you know. So using technology and data-driven data analysts, we basically enable us to basically learn from our mistakes and improve on those going forward.
I'm loving the sound of that. Skelect 2 is embarking on similar ventures in terms of technology. We do have a very large drone because there are some very heavily forested areas that it might be difficult to send up a team initially. So we'll send up the drone and then we can go up after. So I'm happy to hear that we're all embracing technology and we're all embracing GIS and data and building sustainably. That was a major topic at the conference, the GCIS conference that was held in St. Kitts and Nevis recently. But let's switch gears a bit to cater more to our listening public in terms of we're at the start of the season. What does NEMA want the general public to know now that we are at the start of the season as to how they should be prepared, what they should be paying attention to, what they should be focusing on in terms of items that they should get, a kit, monitoring of their homes? What is that first set of messaging that we're sending out to the general public?
Okay, so basically the agency is guided by updates and information from the Met office. When a hurricane is approaching, the officers basically will brief us, alert us of the weather conditions and whatever system that is going to impact us. Okay, they generally issue some sort of advisory or bulletin to basically warn about the information or the tropical cyclone and provide important details with regards to its development. As the system progresses, they basically will continue to update us on its development, and this will be followed by a series of alerts, advisories. Okay, so generally they will issue a tropical depression advisory. That's like in the first instance, and that's basically giving basically a general overview of the storm. We don't really call it a storm as yet, but the investor basically call it. All right. Following that, as the storm developer progresses, they will send out a second advisory, which is a tropical storm advisory. If the invest intensifies, it reaches 39 miles per hour, it is given a name, and that's when we basically name the storms. All right. Following that, we'll be on hurricane watch, because as the storm is approaching, if conditions are favorable, it's basically going to develop into a hurricane. And at this point, a hurricane watch advisory is given. This basically means that you should expect some sort of hurricane conditions within the next 48 hours. But this doesn't mean that we will be impacted because, the track could change or whatever the case might be. But it's just a way of getting the public aware and informed of the impending storm. If it is predicted to affect our area, then they move the advisory to a hurricane warning, and that is when we basically initiate all sorts of plans to ensure that the general public remains safe. So this is where NEMA is going to come in and basically send out the bulletins to tell persons to not start to prepare, but at least expect a hurricane to impact us. Expect a hurricane to impact us. These advisories generally, they are worded, but sometimes they color coordinate them as well. So you might have a yellow being a watch and a red being like a warning. So if you see the colors and so forth, it kind of give you an idea that how serious or how severe the impact might be. All right, some things that we stress to keep in mind or do just before the house on the hurricane is to basically prepare an emergency kit. When the hurricane approaches, having well-stocked emergencies is important because you don't want to wait until it's too late to actually start to prepare, get things in order. It's recommended generally that you have at least a 3-day supply, but having 7 is ideal, is adequate, because you don't know how long we're going to be out of touch or out of reach to restock or whatever the case might be. So 7 days is ideal in our context. Some things that you generally want to keep in your emergency supplies kit is basically, well, importantly, you have to have some sort of communication device. So, like maybe a radio that is battery powered, of course. Having cell phones is important with today's technology and so forth. You also have to have medication. If you have some kind of ailment, you have to ensure that you have medication. You have a stock of medication. Make sure you have perishable food, non-perishable foods. Yes, so that's include like canned goods and so forth. Generally, you have to have an opener, not one that works with electricity, of course.
Yeah, old school, they use a knife.
Use a knife, have some extra clothes, make sure that you have a good supply of hygiene supplies, a blanket, some cash on hand just in case, water, of course, you have to have a good supply of water, a flashlight with batteries, and secure all your important documents, your passports, birth certificates, and so forth. And generally, the most important things, you basically have those in a kit to basically prepare you for the event of the storm. So those are some of the general guidelines.
I'm happy that you brought up that, especially as it relates to what should be in the kits and the non-perishable items, because we know that we live on an island and the majority of our electrical infrastructure is overhead. It is external, it is outdoor. So it is, as much as we try as much as possible to make our grid as resilient, it is likely that the weather disturbances will have an impact on our infrastructure. And we get a lot of messages, I'm ice cream in my freezer one down and may I not to eat and how I gonna play my Xbox. I'm kidding you not, I can show you these messages that we get on social media. And we want persons to understand that when hurricane season is approaching, you should be very sparingly purchasing perishable goods. So you really shouldn't have a freezer full of goods when hurricane season is here, because you have to reasonably expect that there will be a weather disturbance. And I know people are thinking, well, why I need cash? Why do I need a radio? As somebody who experienced a Category 5 hurricane, I didn't imagine that I needed these things until it happened. So how was I able to get in touch? How was I able to know what is going on? Because, again, telecommunications will be impacted. You take it for granted that you can just go to the ATM and get some cash, but that also will be impacted. So I want people to take very seriously what the Deputy National Disaster Coordinator is mentioning, Mr. Bradshaw, about your kit. And if you're not so sure what should go into a kit, Skelec has a kit on display down in our customer service area, as well as some tips. So you can go and look at our kit, our rain boots, raincoat, umbrella candles, the non-perishable goods, how you should stock your important documents, because this will be very important. So I'm just strengthening your point.
Yes. Also to mention, you could also visit NEMA Facebook page. There's also the list that is on the Facebook page to basically highlight or identify some of these products as well. But importantly, I think the onus is on us, as I mentioned before, and just to piggyback off of what you said as well, we have to understand that disaster will affect us, so you have to develop a kind of mindset to understand that in the event of a disaster, don't think that it's going to be as normal.
No.
Don't expect you could play Xbox tomorrow if a hurricane come and affect us today, you got to understand that there are certain changes and so forth that you have to make in order to access, in order to understand or accept these kind of impact, so it's important and it's critical to understand that putting yourself in a frame of mind to understand that disasters will impact us, and you're not going to have the same amenities or accommodations that you usually have during peacetime.
Certainly. So we do only have a few minutes left. I'm going to open the phone lines, give our lovely callers the opportunity to call in. And while they are doing so, Mr. Bradshaw, what particular advice do you have for the elderly, disabled, or vulnerable persons in our community and also the communities that they live in as it relates to hurricane preparation? So what are we saying to this particular group? Because we have to
Okay.
be mindful of this group.
Okay, so this is a very important, a very good question. Sometimes we tend to take these groups for granted. We tend to think that they have everything organized or coordinated.
We just don't remember them in all
Yes.
of our doing, which is not good.
Yes, and I mean, I must admit, I went to a meeting at Ross University, I think it was last week, and I could admit, like, I've never thought about animals in that sense. Animals is a part of the vulnerable groups.
Because you're probably not an animal lover, or maybe you don't have a pet. So
Well, I don't have a pet. I don't
so
have a
persons
pet,
with
but
pets, they will definitely
Yeah.
think about that.
So you definitely have to keep them in mind as well. You have to do things for them as well. But regards to the human element or the human aspect, elderly persons, disabled persons, you have to basically advise them to communicate, let someone know that this is their stance or this is what they want to do. So in the event of a storm and they're going to stay at home or they're going to move to a shelter, tell someone that that is what they're going to do. Have communication prepared in the event of, be able to reach out to someone, build up a support system to basically keep them throughout the storm and even after, because you want to check on them after the storm as well. Ensure that they have access, ensure that someone.
We have a caller. Let's take that caller, Mr. Bradshaw. Oh, the caller gone. All right, I'm sure that person will call back.
Yeah,
You can
ensure
continue.
that this individual have access to your home. So if you stay at home, ensure that person could actually get into the home after the storm or even during the storm in
Just before the storm.
just
You
before
might
the
just
storm,
be important to, if you have an elderly parent,
Yeah,
just
to
let
go
your
and check.
parent come and stay with you.
Yes. If you have special needs, let's say you have special medication and so forth, dietary needs and so forth, you have to ensure that your emergency kit basically tailors to your needs. So ensure that if you're diabetic, and you want insulin and those sort of stuff, make sure you have those kind of things inside of your emergency kit.
Okay, I think it looks like our caller is back. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, this is a good and timely program as we are now in the hurricane season. One question: does St. Kitts Nevis still have the national search and rescue team?
Yes, that is a committee. There's a search and rescue committee within the
NEOC.
Yes, so there are
framework,
different
yeah.
subcommittees, and that is one.
I didn't hear that.
Go ahead, Mr. Bradshaw.
Yes. When there's an impending storm, we activate the NEOC, which is the National Emergency Operations Center, and there's a committee that is basically responsible for search and rescue. It involves the defense force, police, fire, those sort of things. So yes, they do still have that committee section operational.
The reason why I asked that question is because I'm a certified search and rescue officer who was trained in 2007 at the NEMA headquarters, right? And I'm also an EMT because the team was comprised of persons from various bodies, doctors, nurses, EMTs, police, soldiers, and police. However, I have not heard of anything for quite some time, especially during the the during the tenure of the former administration, the former government. I have not heard anything whatsoever in terms of the operation of the search and rescue team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well. As I said, it still exists.
Committee,
It still exists. So, in an event, if there is the need, the team basically is gonna activate and basically do what they have to do with regards to search and rescue. As I say, it's comprised of key stakeholders such as the defense force, the police, the fire rescue, and probably somebody from the hospital arm as well. They basically deals with these sort of situations. But if you say you had the training and so forth, I mean, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to fire and rescue services or the defense force and let them know your expertise and basically have a discussion with them to basically outline what role you could play with regards to giving support.
Yeah, because not cutting you off. The thing is, persons who become victims of a disaster, most of the time they're in need of medical care, and rather than waiting for an ambulance that is at the scene of an incident that has taken place somewhere else, if the national search and rescue team is being deployed, those victims or that victim can receive the necessary care and be transported to the nearest medical facility rather than waiting. That's the reason why the National Search and Rescue Team was established in the first place, in case of disasters. But as I said, I have not heard anything about the National Search and Rescue Team, especially during the tenure of the former government. I don't know the reason why.
All right, well, caller, we want to thank you for calling in. And the NEMA is the National Emergency Management Agency. They are the coordinating entity in relation to a disaster. However, outside of that, I am certain that the fire and rescue services and members of the armed forces do play a crucial role when it comes to rescue missions and services, and we always want to ensure that it is a coordinated effort. But I can definitely tell you that all of the players that will be required for a national response are a part of the National Emergency Operations Center and that entire unit. So we have Ministry of Health, Social Development, Foreign Affairs. If you ever get to be a fly on the wall in that room, you'll be so amazed at how great these teams work together to ensure that our response to a disaster is what it needs to be, and that there's minimum loss of life and minimum damage to property, and the impact of the disaster is lessened. So, Mr. Batcher, we're almost out of time, but I'll give you the opportunity to provide a few parting words, especially as we speak to the public about the importance of hurricane preparedness, how to get in touch with NEMA, your role, what we can look forward to hearing from NEMA in the coming weeks and as the season progresses.
Okay, well, just to wrap up, I basically want to advise the public to generally, whenever there is a intending or impending storm or impact, to always listen out for appropriate advisories from trusted sources, Some persons just generally go online and find things and they get all flustered or whatever the case might be. Always listen out for information from trusted sources. The local radio stations that I said, the local radio stations, Vaughan Radio in Nevis, Freedom FM in St. Kitts, Win FM, ZZ Radio, and television. Those are the main sources of information with regards to hurricanes. NEMA also have a Facebook page, social media, all the different social media platforms. You could find us on those as well. is NEMA at SKN, or NEMA SKN, and you're gonna find the information on these these pages or these sites. You also want to keep in mind that it's important to prepare. Don't wait until it's too late to have something in place in the event of, so prepare your kits, have them ready just in case, to ensure that you basically stay safe during or even after the storm has passed.
All right, Mr. Batcher, we want to thank you for joining us on our program this morning. We know that this is a staple program that we have every year. We start off June by letting persons understand the importance of hurricane preparedness. Next week, we'll have SCELEC's disaster coordination team here speaking about SCELEC's preparatory efforts. We do a lot of work to prepare for storms, and we want you to know how hard we are working to ensure that the grid stays up for as long as it can, and we have a minimum damage to property and loss of life, and our teams remain safe. We want to thank you for being regular members of the audience for this particular radio program. I know you do look forward to it. So until we meet again in the next week and a half, remember SCELEC is the nation's leading utility provider, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Bye-bye.
I ain't got no hurricane safety tips now. Well, SCELEC got. Together, we can weather the storm. So, check this. Prepare for power outages. Charge devices before a storm strikes. Develop a plan in the event that electricity goes. Learn